Okay, so today we have one of my friends that I know he actually lives in my neighborhood, so it's kind of funny that we got to know each other via our church that we go to, but found out that he lived in my neighborhood. But Scott, he is a developer over at Amazon. Scott does have a very different background, very similar to kind of like the audience today. Like he has a background in non-traditional, so he didn't go in necessarily as a person going in for tech. He went in for a different background and kind of now is part of software engineering at Amazon. So, Scott, I'll go ahead and let you do your intros to yourself and we'll get this all going.
Great. Do I need to keep it short, keep it long? What do you want here?
Yeah, just give us a brief overview of kind of like what you do at Amazon, kind of like that kind of thing, and I'll have a few other questions to follow up for that.
Yeah, sure. So hi, my name is Scott. I am, if you're watching, I'm sure you're here because you come from a non-traditional background as well. Um, I got my start from the same place that a lot of you are probably coming from, which is a boot camp. My boot camp is no longer around. It's actually called Code Up. They went under about 2 years ago, and there's really not a great reason why. But that's aside the point. So yeah, I my background's really interesting. So if you kind of wind back a little bit, I came from a military background. So I served in the Army for 4 years. I was a Special Forces medic, and yeah, whenever I finished up being in the military, I had this idea in my mind that I wanted to go practice medicine, be a PA or a doctor or something, because it just made sense. It felt like a shoe in. And I think Lynn said that she had a chemistry background, so we have somewhere we can relate there. Um, the reason why I decided not to go into medicine is my daughter was being born, and I had just taken the MCAT, and it just seemed like a really long road ahead. And I did a lot of deep introspection about what I really wanted. And it's really honestly, I wanted a more balanced lifestyle that is not going to be completely centered around the job. Um, and I guess there's been a little irony in that because I'm a super commuter right now working for Amazon. But anyways, yeah. So when I decided to go into tech, uh, there was this program available for veterans. It was called Vet Tech, and incidentally and unfortunately, they no longer have any funding. So Vet Tech actually shut down last year, but it was an initiative that was designed to get more veterans into the technology space for highly needed jobs like cybersecurity and software engineering. And some other things like software solutions architects and things like that. So I took advantage of that program. There were a few named programs that were preferred vendors for giving out or teaching software engineering. One of those was CodeUp, and they are based out of San Antonio. So this was back in 2021. So the end of 2021, I got into CodeUp, and they had a 6 month web dev boot camp. And I'm sure everybody can probably remember their experience pretty fondly about first getting into software engineering. Like it's it's a show for sure. Like just everything is just new and you don't know what you're doing. And it's such a hard space to really get into and understand at a fundamental level. I mean, Coda really helped bridge the gap there. And I really enjoyed the experience. We covered both sides of the spectrum. So we were full stack web development. We did a little front ends to begin with, and then we dove into the back end towards the last bit of it. And we had some capstone projects. So after that was all said and done, I graduated, and they helped us with job placement. But that only takes you so far. For you to go and find a job that you're really hungry for and you're looking for, you really have to pull out all the stops and you have to get organized. What I did is I applied for hundreds of jobs over the course of like 2 months. remember distinctly applying to 11 different Amazon jobs as an entry-level software engineer, and I got denied to all of them, every single one. Never got a response back. They were all just all application closed and all that.
Hmm.
But I kept a really like distinct ledger, just detailed about where I applied, the person of contact, when I applied, should I follow up, who's the recruiter, things of that nature. And at a certain point, after about 2 months of searching, I got a call back from Amazon for a software engineering apprenticeship. Now, this is also a program that is also not around anymore, but there may be some hope for it coming back in the future. So, what an apprenticeship is it's a usually the Department of Labor has these initiatives to get the like people who are looking to get into really hard to reach jobs that require a lot of skilled labor. Software engineering being one of the newer ones to that field. I think a lot of people think of apprenticeships of like being a plumber's and electrician's apprenticeship. Um, Different businesses can go in there and be registered apprenticeship or have registered apprenticeships and kind of get that funding from the federal government. So Amazon put their name in the hat and they started an apprenticeship program. And I believe it had been running for many years. There have been a lot of apprentices that came before me. So how that looked is when I got in the door, what they did is they did a lot of didactic training. We started with Java. We moved into more front-end languages. We did some data structures and algorithms. We did some DevOps and stuff like that. And that happened for about 4 months. Um, After those 4 month period ended, I was placed on a team and I ended up at a AWS metering team. And you're probably like unfamiliar. What is a metering team? So imagine like your home gets electricity and you have a meter on the side of your house, and it tells you that your kilowatt usage for a given month, and that's how they basically come up with your bill. You know, you have a kilowatt usage at a certain rate, and that will be what you pay at the end of the month. In a similar way, metering has uh, all of the AWS microservices that are used. They have a certain rate at which they expect to charge, and your usage for that service at that rate is going to be what ends up at your bill every month. Our prime directive was generating these usage records, um, indexing them, and basically just sending them to a data warehouse and eventually downstream to a bill. It's just saying that actually makes it sound simple, but it is so incredibly complex. I mean, the architecture that goes in behind that is massive. I mean, we have petabytes of data that happen every hour, and I mean that number actually doubles every 6 months or something like that. So
Wow.
it's insane the amount of usage that comes through there and that gets tracked, and it all gets stored in records by law for about 10 years. So when I got to that team, just that initial experience, you get there, there's a lot of excitement and stuff like that. But when you start getting into it, like if you have a good manager, they just don't expect anything of you. Like learn the space, read on the documentation, study the system's architecture and stuff like that. But when you get to a big tech place like Amazon, it's a lot like drinking through a fire hose. And that fire hose never really gets turned off, but your ability to be able to sip and drink through that fire hose actually just gets a little bit easier. You just learn to
Hmm.
bear with it over time, and your experience kind of pays tribute to what you can do at a faster pace down the line. So for the first 3 months, I didn't understand anything. I didn't know what the acronyms meant. And so like just to come out of that experience, like you just studied like all these broad open source things coming up to that. It is just such a bewildering experience. But um, they Amazon had a lot of patience in the apprenticeship. They had certain goals that you had to meet. And there's almost you can think of it like a checkbox. So like can they test? Can they build packages? Can they look at dashboards and diagnose issues and stuff like that. And it you just kind of get in the flow of things, and it's really hard to understand. Big tech likes to use their own platforms. Like to use their own acronyms, and they have their own culture. And it's very true. When you hear culture, that is a very distinct experience. Like one thing for Amazon that most people, it's different. A lot of people do PowerPoints when they want to explain things. Amazon, you'll be given a document that is kind of an overview of a proposed function or feature that you want to add to your package or your application or something like that. That we call it a one page, which is a proposal, and then eventually you'll have basically a whole level design, a design document, and you'll sit there and you'll read a design document sometimes for a half hour without saying a word to anybody else. And your job is to make comments on it and stuff like that, and give your feedback from your experience, and kind of talk about things about the best way to do 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 some kind of solution that you're looking to do.
Gotcha.
Um, and yeah, it's been quite a ride. So I ended up it took me a year and a half, and I did quite a bit. I touched Java, I touched Python, I touched Ruby, YAML, XML. You work with everything. One of the most interesting things about what Amazon does is in other places sometimes they have like specific DevOps people who like literally will deploy applications and stuff like that. Amazon, you're responsible oftentimes for writing, testing, and deployment, which is sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's also a really good learning experience because you get to touch so many things, but it really comes at you fast. Um, and yeah, it's been an experience. It took me a year and a half to get that. Once I checked off all of the boxes that Amazon wanted me to fulfill, they finally promoted me to being a software development engineer.
Okay.
And just to put that in perspective, the cohort that I started with of apprentices was about 22, and now it's less than seven.
Mm.
So there is a pretty high attrition rate, and I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. But yeah, it's kind of a crazy experience. Now I'm in Austin. So my last team was in Seattle. Now I'm in Austin. I work for a international expansion team. So we have this application. It's a platform called Seller App. When you go buy something on Amazon, it's not always fulfilled by Amazon. Sometimes it's fulfilled by independent vendors. So say like Samsung wants to sell
Hmm.
TVs, but they want Amazon's space to be able to sell product because they know that it'll sell well, and Amazon's a brand that they recognize. So they will either sell their product to Amazon or they'll do the fulfillment directly to the customer. And we do is that whole shopping experience
Hmm.
is already built upon. But what we do is we deploy it to different regions around the world. And
Got
so
it.
that's my primary function these days is basically doing a lot of configuration changes, making some functionality changes as needed as we deploy into different parts of the world.
Okay.
And some
Let me
people
pause you
think,
right there, Scott,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because
go ahead.
you gave us a lot of information to
Yeah.
digest, and it's all awesome. It's exactly the stuff kind of like I'm sure a lot of people want to know and hear. But so let's back up here really quick. So you're drinking out of the fire hose. You're kind of getting through all of this. And you said your attrition rate is really high, right? So you have like a higher attrition rate
Mhm.
going from 20 something down to like 7. So what was it that kind of like kept you still able to keep going and like learning the things and feeling like you were making like progress and impact? Because I'm sure as everyone here who's like graduated from a boot camp or started your first job, it's like scary the first couple of times to get in. So like
Yeah.
what were the things that kind of kept you like I guess keeping your head above the water?
Yeah, that's it's a loaded question. I'll give you a loaded answer. So I tend to think of myself as pretty gritty, and I know that's a soft quality. I don't necessarily think that I'm the most technically proficient or the smartest person in the room. I think what sets me apart from other people is that I have a growth. I like to think that I have a growth mindset. And for those of you who are not aware of what growth mindset is, it's kind of like a paradigm, or it's a way of looking at problems. And rather than taking in as like an overwhelming experience with all this negative emotion and just letting it defeat you, a growth mindset is more of an adoption of like, I don't know it yet. but I know I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
And you just iterate on that. You get, you improve by 1% one day or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, or you fail to come up with a solution, in one sitting. Well, you walk away and you come back to it. And just basically the adoption of that, I think it was been one of my biggest success factors, is that you really have to just believe that you're not going to know it all right away. Even some of the engineers that have been in the space long, they don't know all the answers right away, but
Mm-hmm.
they know based on their experience, and they have the confidence that they will find the answers to it. Because in software especially, there's so much out there, there's so much documentation. Guaranteed somebody's already had encountered the problem before, and
Mm-hmm.
you just need to have the tenacity to go find it.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Okay, that's a great mindset to have, and a really good way to explain it. So you're in like like essentially a lot of the acronyms, the FAANG or manga or whatever it is now at this point, depending on which companies you kind of like consider up there. So you're in that industry where like a lot of people apply, can't get into, and a lot of people also leave or can't perform to the standard of it. So being in that industry, what has kind of like give me two things, okay? What has kind of been you're like, this is insanely cool that they have this at Amazon, and this is also so crazy that they still do this at Amazon. What are those two things that you have there?
Oh.
So basically,
Uh,
like this amazing thing they do, and then also you're just like, I can't believe they still do this.
So I don't really have one thing, but it always ceases to amaze me the scale at which
Hmm.
they're approaching like problems and stuff like that. I mean, they have so many different things that they do. I mean, they have Alexa, they do product offerings, they have complete sellers markets, they offer cloud services, they're in grocery. They have all of these different things, and it never ceases to amaze me that like they have the confidence to take it on, and when experiments don't work out, that's fine. They sometimes make cuts and people transfer and stuff like that. But I'm always in awe that I work at such a place where it the challenge is always there. Like
Yeah.
there's always like something cool that you can work on. And some of it's really boring, some of it's really bland. But yeah. So the other one, what is something that they still do? Um, I'll have to say that despite the industry being more of a focus on microservices nowadays,
Hmm.
they like to make the claim that kind of are in the microservice space. With like AWS, they have independent, unique solutions where you can take one or the other and you can
Yeah.
customize your own application. But behind the scenes, they're still working with a lot of monolithic platforms,
Yeah.
a lot of big code that has a lot of big tangled web of dependencies that often, fail things. So
Yep.
like when something changes, like you can see this ripple effect that just stratified into a bunch of other different packages, and like
Hmm.
that's what keeps us really busy most of the
Got
time.
it.
So I mean, we'd like to think that microservices are, still like we're on the cutting edge and that's what we're doing all the time, but it could be further from the truth. It still feels monolithic in some respects.
So not only are you guys entrepreneurs, but you're also firefighters at the same time, putting out as many fires as you
Yeah.
can. Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. Cool. All right. Well, last one for me, and then I'll open it up to anyone else here who has like questions. Like, be thinking of like stuff that you'd like to like ask Scott that would give you value, but also like maybe it's just something you never knew about or like a question you had. But my last question for this is, so Scott, like you've gotten into the place where a lot of people want to. You see behind the scenes, you understand a lot of the work. At this point in time in your career, do you feel like you just know so much more now than you ever did before and that you can tackle any problem in any company of any size, or do you feel like there's just still so much more out there that you need to learn and understand and that you're still at the beginning phases of it?
Yeah. Uh, you know, I think looking back, hindsight's 2020. When I look at back where I was 2.5, 3 years ago, I mean, I could barely put a function together. I was doing like these really bad software practices, and I've come so far from today. And it's really hard to like kind of remember every single step along the way. But where I'm at now, as opposed to where I was 3 years ago, just because I decided to continuously pursue the path, it's just remarkable. I had never imagined myself being at a company this big. I never thought I was going to get it in my first try. I thought I was going to have to be working at, some small company for, a quarter of the pay for X amount of years before I can even qualify for something like this.
Hmm.
But to answer your question, there's just such a huge expanse of different tech solutions out there, and Amazon does a lot of them. They don't restrict what coding languages you can do. They don't really, you can use different build systems and stuff like that. They will take these open source tech solutions out there, and then they'll put wrappers around them and develop it and integrate it into something customizable
Hmm.
in their purview. And there's just so much to learn. But I never try to let it overwhelm me. I just
Yeah.
take it one step at a time. How do you eat an elephant? And one bite at a time. You shouldn't worry yourself about like how great you need to be at the moment, because if you get worried about that, you're just going to be just a mental mess. And you just have to just take it in stride. You find the solutions and you iterate upon yourself. If you are 1% better every day, then you look at yourself a year from now, you're gonna just be in awe of what you've accomplished.
Nice.
So
Okay, awesome. Thanks for answering that one. Okay, I'll open it up to you guys. Again, we do this. This is basically just networking, people that we know as developers or other people know who are volunteering their time to just answer, sit down, give out this information to you guys, and you all can make use of it however you want. Ask questions, but if anyone has any questions right now, I'll go ahead and open it up, and then if we kind of like do that awkward dance of silence and everyone's just staring at each other, we'll go ahead and close it off at that point. But anyone got any questions you want to ask Scott?
I have a question. Unless somebody else wants to go first.
Go for it.
Okay. Was the apprenticeship paid or was it unpaid?
yes, it was paid.
Oh, okay, good.
So yeah, I mean, a year and a half without pay would be,
Yeah,
and to stick through with that would be something.
I
But
was
yeah,
like,
I was paid.
is it unpaid? Like maybe that's part of the reason why the why it got cut from 22 to 7. Because I could go that long
It,
without pay.
no, Amazon is very generous.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's good.
And with their interns as well.
Mm,
You're looking to get a 4-year degree in computer science or something like that, and you manage to secure an internship, you know, after the fact that you do coding boot camp, just hypothetically,
yeah.
your interns are going to make the same amount as what your apprentices are making.
Mm,
And it's in the six-figure range, which is really
mm,
awesome. That is more than you can ever probably dream of for a lot of people. So yeah, it was really helpful along the way. I don't know if I could have how long others like that 7 people, like you said, would probably be even less if it didn't pay or didn't pay well.
mm.
So
Related question is I mean, it could be a lot of like personal reasons due to, people's lives changing and demands of the program itself, but why why do you think there was so much um so many people cut from the program?
there's there are a multitude of different reasons. I'll name a few. Bureaucracy is one of them. Amazon's a massive organization.
Uh,
They have, like I said before, they experiment with some things. And when you're in the business space, not all of your products or your services or offerings are going to be lucrative, and not all of them are going to be
mm,
profitable.
mhm,
One thing that Amazon does that is probably a little bit of an orange flag for some people is they do restructuring almost every year or every other year. And they really take a close look at the profitability, their stack rankings, like who's performing, well and who's not performing well.
mm,
So there's kind of a high bar for success. Um, and that can be a little overwhelming for some people. Also, your manager matters. It's like 1,000% your manager matters. I was lucky to have 2 really great managers so far, and the ones that are trusting of you, and when you communicate well with them, and you even confess like, hey, I'm having issues with this. Just keeping that open line of communication with your manager is a good way to stay in sync and keep your head off the chopping block. But if you have a really poor manager, like some people I've known, who are micromanagers, they have their expectations are too high or unreasonable. Like this one conversation overheard the other day, there was a guy who his manager expected him to work at 10 o'clock at night because that piece of like that package was needed for the very next day. And he got out of that. So I mean, it's multifactorial. There's some of it was RTO. For those of you who don't know, RTO is return to office. A lot of people were hired during the pandemic remotely,
Mm.
with a clause in their contract that required them to relocate if Amazon asked them to do so. That clause was in my contract, which is why I'm a super commuter. But not everybody was willing to comply with that too. So
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I've heard that that kind of strong line from Amazon before, but a lot of other companies are doing that. A lot of other big
yeah,
tech companies are doing that.
yeah,
Not to say that I support that, but whatever.
yeah. I
uh,
have my opinions on it too, but they signed the checks, so
yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Another quick question. The tech space is obviously way different than it is now, even just 3 years ago, right? Like when you started, like particularly with AI.
Mhm.
Um, how, like, what are the thoughts on AI, at least like internally at Amazon and like maybe personally? Like, how do you use it? Do you use it in your job? Do they not like you to use it in your job? That kind of thing.
No, they actually encourage it. There are actually never different interfaces that you can work with the API. They have, if you go to the Amazon and AWS website, for
Mm,
example, or even Amazon.com now, they have these API integrations where how they're using them for the most, from what I've seen, is just kind of like a an advanced chatbot.
mm,
And I think what that does is it helps with like search functionality. Not everybody's really well versed at finding the information. When you submit
yeah.
a query,
Mm,
for a lot of people, the old way, if you don't put in the right keywords, then you're probably not going to find exactly what you're looking for, and there's going to be a lot of churn there. Um, we have also there are some integrations that are in our IDEs or integrated development environments.
mm,
Um, and you can use them. And if you type in the right prompts, you say, analyze this class for me right here, and it'll do a short summary of what each component is doing. It's pretty good. It's not as robust as it probably will be in the future.
mm.
There are some things that are just very generalized and just fluff. There's not all of it adds value,
Yeah.
but in some cases, you can tell them like, "Hey, write a unit test for this," and it'll actually do it pretty well,
Mm.
which is a little scary. But yeah, I think AI will definitely help improve the pace at which we develop. I think the future for developers is the landscape is going to look very different.
Mm.
Prompt engineering is actually becoming something that's a little more mainstream now. You can actually go get a degree for prompt engineering, but you really do still have to
Really?
understand the internal systems and the mechanisms that are happening behind the scenes. Because
Sure.
yeah, like if you put in a prompt that
Yeah,
I
garbage
want to
in,
I want to
garbage
do
out.
this. Yeah, and if you're not specific enough, if
Yeah.
you're not very specific, you're only going to get what you put into it. Like your input's only as
Yeah.
good as your output. Like
Yeah.
they have that saying for that. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Cool.
Cool.
but
That's awesome.
Lynn and Ruby, you guys got any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. What do you think was the defining factors or factors that kind of set you apart from other applicants and kind of led you to being picked for the apprenticeship?
um, it wasn't my technical skills. And I know that's something that's very That's huge in the tech industry. I mean, the gates to getting into some of these software engineering jobs are very high. The standards are high. You'll have to do coding interviews or technical interviews. Mine was more behavioral in nature because of the nature of the apprenticeship.
Mm,
They weren't necessarily as interested in what your tech ability was, because they had an acknowledgement that um, they were working with people at all different skill levels. So really, it was kind of a side door for me. And I encourage you, wherever you apply, if you find something where there's an apprenticeship or something like that, I definitely encourage you to apply, because they're looking for people who have just kind of this diversification, or just like this alternative mindset. And when you get people who go, and this is my opinion, when you get people who go in these computer science degrees and they learn all from the same textbooks and the same, you know, repository of knowledge that's been compiled for the past 30, 40 years, you're going to get a lot of the same thinking and mindsets. I think what they're looking for is that diversification. So it's that little bit of, it's that different edge. And I think what probably attracted it to me is my ability to communicate. I think that's one of the better things that, or one of my stronger attributes. And it does actually matter. If you can't communicate in the software development world nowadays, like, no one's sitting in the dark anymore developing code. You have to be able to work with people. You have to be able to communicate what you're doing on a daily basis. This is what we call our daily sprints. You have to give a 2-minute summary of what you did the day before, what you're doing today, any blockers that you're perceiving. And yeah, you have to be able to stay organized as well. So really, knowing yourself, what your strengths are, and then selling those strengths is what you need to do. If you're a great communicator, lean into that. It's absolutely what set me over the bar. But also, whenever I went in for these interviews, I was very determined to find this. I studied the 12 principles that Amazon defines, and I reverse engineered those 12 principles and applied it to the experiences that I already had.
mm.
And I actually relayed that knowledge onto somebody else who ended up getting a job at Amazon as well, with the same information that I had. And there was another guy who got hired just after him in the cohort behind me. So,
Nice.
that was something that I brought to the table. And it probably rang true for a lot of the other people. Apparently there was like 1,000 applicants or something like that. And, out of 1,000 people, 22 were in a cohort. So, yeah,
Yeah.
just recognize what your strengths are, look at the job application, and then apply your experiences in your life to those keywords that they're looking for. If you can make that connection and you can sell that connection, sell yourself, then you're probably going to have a better time in the interview getting through that stack of applications that usually goes in the trash. So, um, did I answer your question well enough, or do you still have some kind of lingering questions there?
No, no, that was great. Yeah,
Okay.
it's really, really helpful to hear that, especially, someone who just completed a boot camp. I feel like there's so much that I still need to learn and that
Yeah.
I need to improve on. So, yeah, I think really focusing more on that behavioral side, uh, gives it
Yeah.
more, or it feels more achievable.
and
Mhm.
and you have work experience, it even if it's not completely relevant to what you will be doing in the future, there you do have to have some technical knowledge, but do draw from those experiences,
Mhm.
Yeah.
because they matter. Whether you believe it or not, it's not all about technical expertise. A lot of it is about your ability to work on a team and work towards some goal in a collaborative way. And you have the job experience to be able to show that, so draw from that.
Mhm.
And having been one who has been interviewed by Amazon and also got through the interview process, but didn't want to move. Um, I can tell you one thing um that I've worked with when I was working with the recruiter to try to help me get through it, and then also being part of a group that has interviewed at other FAANG companies as well. Your story of who you are and your journey is the only unique thing out of the 1 million other applicants who are trying to get into these companies. Your ability to tell that story and how it will basically take you into this job and take you to the desired goal that they have. Your ability to tell that story is always going to be unique to you, but it's going to be your biggest selling point. Now, yes, there is that technical hurdle. You know, you might have to go through some algorithmic questions or data structures and algorithms, interview portions. You might need to talk about technology to a more detailed level than you're normally used to or comfortable to, and you have to practice that. But if you know your story and you can tell that story and convey that well to people, that's the thing that they can see is like, could I work with that person? Does that person make sense on my team? Do they make sense for the goal that we're trying to achieve? That's the big defining feature of every developer. So just something to think about too. I thought I could add that on there.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I mean, the cheat sheet for technical interviews is out there. There's tons of resources to help you get prepared to get through that obstacle. So that's not the thing that you need to worry about as much. Definitely practice that. Practice that at nauseum, because you're gonna want to show off whenever you get in that interview on your technical expertise. But once you've gotten past that boundary, then we're on the focus of you. What can you offer that's different from somebody else who also passed the technical interview?
Mm.
So the cheat sheets out there, the technical knowledge is out there. There's a lot of resources that Joe's used and that in books that I've been through that can help you through that. But definitely practice, talking in the mirror and just doing that role play of questions of like what you think that you'll get be asked. What's your greatest strength? And I think we all know some of them to a certain extent because we sat in interviews. But
Mm-hmm.
role play that. Give them your answer to yourself and find a person if you feel like doing that and bounce the questions off them to see kind of mix it up and get their response.
Mm.
So that matters, I think.
You could practice interviewing with ChatGPT now too, with the voice thing.
No way.
Yeah, a lot of people do that now.
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to know the responses to that.
And
Like,
then you can ask for feedback too. I use it occasionally and say like how was that? What do you think? You know, that kind of thing to ask it to critique you.
yeah,
Ruby,
man.
you have a question? Or
Yes, I have a question. First, I want to thanks for your time. And I know that Scott, you mentioned earlier that it was a lot of thing was given to you. Like let's say you were started a big project, because I've been a software developer for 3 years and I still feel like
Mhm.
I don't know anything. And I recently started a
That's
new
me
job
too.
a couple months ago. It's completely different tech stack, a new tech stack, a new business unit. It's very different. So it was the project also given to me. The place have a very little documentation as well.
Mhm.
So it was given to me and just basically was like your task right now, try to get familiar with the process and ask question. Thing
Mhm.
is, my question is, what's everything? But anyway, I guess my question is, do you have any tips for asking a better question, especially given it's such a big project like that? And I know that Amazon is very big, a lot of things
Yeah.
given to you. It's like a big system.
Mhm.
How do you come up with more specific question instead of just like, what is everything?
So, I think one of the qualities that's kind of like it's not said aloud a lot. It's kind of like intrinsic and they expect it is you want to ask the focus question. Never go in with a question like, how do I do this? That's too ambiguous. That's vague. And it kind of implies that you want them to do a little bit of the work for you. My process for being able to ask focused questions is I look at as much as I can. I try to familiarize myself with it, which you mentioned. And a lot of it can probably be daunting. The documentation's not really well fleshed out for some things, but there's also such thing as too much documentation too that can often be very misleading. So familiarizing yourself with it, I guarantee that you probably have some senior developers, just depending on the size of your team, that you might be able to ask these questions to. Um, it's and I mean it. I don't know what you're working with. I don't know what your tech stack looks like, but there's a lot of information open out on the internet. I mean, you have a community of people here. I've had people from my cohort that would just ask random questions like, "Hey, do you know how to do this?" And just getting comfortable with asking questions is really crucial. There is like this. temptation to want to do everything yourself for some people. That's definitely me. I want to know all the answers and I want to be able to figure it out myself. But that there's also a little bit of harm to that as well, because if you take too much time to do something, people are going to start being like, okay, well, why are you not producing any results? But yeah, it you have what sounds like the imposter syndrome that literally every single software developer feels. You don't feel like you deserve to be there, but yeah, so I mean that's my process. I research as much as possible, find out what I can about the tech stack that I'm working with, figure out what the problem is, and researching like if there's any existing solutions out there for it. And if I'm still coming up empty, that's when I go and I seek help. Or if I'm just trying to build something over and over again and it keeps failing, like I'm actually dealing with that right now. I'm working with Gradle. I've never worked with that stack or that build. Um, I've never worked with that build program before. And it's a little daunting. There's this like you're always feeling the pressure of like um being able to meet your goals and stuff and your stuff during your sprints on time. But yeah, just take a little bit at a time, ask questions. And yeah, unfortunately I wish I could help you with more like specifics, but like yeah, it's a constantly evolving process even for me. So
Yeah. And
Yeah,
what
I
you're
always find that it's such a struggle to even come up with specific question.
hmm
mhm.
Yeah, so it just get a lot of overwhelming.
Yeah,
And I also know that just never ask generic question and always do
yeah,
research first. But sometimes I even struggle to come up with good questions to ask. And
yeah,
I think it was a lot of like software developer also struggle with not communicating well.
Mm.
yeah.
And I also think a lot of even the senior people in my team also struggle with explaining stuff, breaking
Yep.
down stuff.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a
So
common common
it's
problem among
very
engineers.
it's hard.
Yeah,
I can go ahead and tell you this. Going on 8 years, going to nine, there's still those moments where I feel like I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. What in the world am I going to do to figure this problem out? But the
Yeah, it's
only
normal.
reason
yeah.
it's different now than it was then is because back then, when you first experienced it, you thought the world would fail if you didn't get it right. And
Mhm.
you realize that most of the time that technically doesn't happen. Like typically there's always a way to learn something. So what I would say for you, start off just asking how things work, asking how
Mhm.
the system communicates, asking how the design is created, asking the smallest pieces how they connect to the larger picture. And
Mhm.
if you break it down to simple enough questions and simple enough problems, you then allow your logic to take over and solve the problems. And you do that enough times, you can solve the bigger picture. But it typically is for me, like I just started a new project that I took over from a consulting company, and I've never worked to the scale and level of Django and Python and all the AWS servers. I'd never worked in them prior to this, but you just like take it one step at a time and you ask the question that gets you the answer, not just to ask the question like, I don't know how this works. Can you please explain it to me? Like that literally
Yeah.
that would help me more than I'd be like, so I see that this function does this. Okay, so do I need to make another function that's similar to that? Break it down even smaller and smaller and smaller and digest it that way. It just helps a lot.
Mm.
Yeah. Definitely keep an open line of communication with your peers and your manager. Like being confident enough and having the confidence to confess what you don't know.
Yeah.
I think it really speaks volumes to your character. If you don't know, confess that you don't know. Hey, I need help. I don't really understand everything about this. I did that with my manager in the office today. I kind of had a little bit of a conflict with like a coworker, and I didn't want to I didn't want to rub him the wrong way. But I asked him, just, hey, professionally, how would you handle this? How would you push back on him? Because I don't think he's right about this. But communication is I think really gonna help as well. So like if you don't know the answer and you can't find the answer and you're frustrated by it, communicate that, it's been a struggle for you and maybe that is the thing that gets you the help that you need. So
Yeah, it was very helpful. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Well, guys, we are a little at time because I know that the office is there close at 7, right?
yeah, but I think I have after hours access. There's some strange people here. They'll come in at noon and they'll leave at like 8 or something like that. So there's
Okay.
still probably a few people here. So
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right here. If you do have any other questions or you have any other things that you would like to ask or you think about later on and you want to ask, okay? So again, our community is still open on Meetup. Feel free to reach out to us there on the meetup page where you signed up and signed up and RSVP'd. Scott, his LinkedIn page is there. So if you want to connect with him on LinkedIn, and whether or not just be in your network or something like that, or potentially ask any questions regarding Amazon or any of that kind of stuff, feel free to reach out to him on that one right there. But I want to ask, and I want to tell everyone here, thank you for coming to our first quote unquote new event under new organization. If you have any other suggestions for people that you want us to interview, you want us to talk through, whether we go in through interview prep or whether we go through debugging sessions or whether we talk about language specific stuff, feel free to suggest them and let us know. Me and Alan, we're both, I'm the organizer and then he's a co-organizer, and we're more than happy to provide whatever resource we can for you guys. But just want to thank you for taking the time off and coming to this meetup, and hope to see you in the future in some other meetups. And Scott, thanks for taking the time off too.
thanks, Joseph. Good to meet you guys, and good luck, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
All right, everyone, have a good one.